Greenwich Village, often referred to by locals as simply the Village, is a neighborhood on the west side of Lower Manhattan, New York City. Greenwich Village has been known as an artist's haven, the bohemian capital, the cradle of the modern LGBT movement, and the East Coast birthplace of both the beat-and 60s counterculture movements. Greenwich, one of the Dutch names for the village, was anglicized to Greenwich. New York University is located in Greenwich Village. Greenwich Village has undergone extensive gentrification and commercialization. The four zip codes that constitute the village, 10,011, 10,012, 10,013, and 10,014, were all ranked among the 10 most expensive in the United States by median housing price in 2014, according to Forbes, with residential property sale prices in the West Village neighborhood typically exceeding $2,000 per square foot in 2015. Geography. Boundaries. The neighborhood is bordered by Broadway to the east, the North River to the west, Houston Street to the south, and 14th Street to the north, and roughly centered on Washington Square Park in New York University. The neighborhoods surrounding it are the East Village and NoHo to the east, Soho to the south, and Chelsea to the north. The East Village was formerly considered part of the Lower East Side and never associated with Greenwich Village. The western part of Greenwich Village is known as West Village. The dividing line is debated. Narrowly speaking, it is the area west of 7th Avenue, which is heavily residential, but broadly speaking it is the area west of 6th Avenue. The grid changes at 6th Avenue, commonly assumed to be the dividing line. The Far West Village is a sub-neighborhood from the Hudson River to Hudson Street. The neighborhood is located in New York's 10th Congressional District, New York's 25th State Senate District, New York's 66th State Assembly District, and New York City Council's 3rd District. Into the early 20th century, Greenwich Village was distinguished from the upper-class neighborhood of Washington Square, based on the major landmark Washington Square Park or Empire walled in the 19th century. Encyclopedia Britannica's 1956 article on New York states that the southern border of the village is Spring Street, reflecting an earlier understanding. The newer district of Soho has since encroached on the village's historic border. Grid plan. As Greenwich Village was once a rural, isolated hamlet to the north of the 17th-century European settlement on Manhattan Island, its street layout is more organic than the planned grid pattern of the 19th-century grid plan. Greenwich Village was allowed to keep the 18th-century street pattern of what is now called the West Village. Areas that were already built up where the plan was implemented, west of what is now Greenwich Avenue and 6th Avenue, resulted in a neighborhood whose streets are dramatically different, in layout, from the ordered structure of the newer parts of Manhattan. Many of the neighborhood's streets are narrow and some curve at odd angles. This is generally regarded as adding to both the historic character and charm of the neighborhood. In addition, as the meandering Greenwich Street used to be on the Hudson River shoreline, much of the neighborhood west of Greenwich Street is on landfill, but still follows the older street grid. When 6th and 7th Avenues were built in the early 20th century, they were built diagonally to the existing street plan, and many older, smaller streets had to be demolished. Unlike the streets of most of Manhattan above Houston Street, streets in the village typically are named rather than numbered. While some of the formerly named streets are now numbered, they still do not always conform to the usual grid pattern when they enter the neighborhood. For example, West 4th Street runs east-west across most of Manhattan, but runs north-south in Greenwich Village, causing it to intersect with West 10th, 11th, and 12th Streets before ending at West 13th Street. A large section of Greenwich Village, made up of more than 50 northern and western blocks in the area up to 14th Street, is part of a historic district established by the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission. The district's convoluted borders run no farther south than 4th Street or St. Luke's Place, and no farther east than Washington Square East or University Place. Redevelopment in that area is severely restricted, and developers must preserve the main facade and aesthetics of the buildings even during renovation. Most of the buildings of Greenwich Village are mid-rise apartments, 19th-century row houses, and the occasional one-family walk-up, a sharp contrast to the high-rise landscape in mid- and downtown Manhattan.